The building was almost silent, the kind of silence that pressed in on the ears and made every sound stand out sharper. The CEO walked slowly through the vast lobby, her heels striking the polished marble floor with crisp, steady beats. Most of the employees had long since gone home, and she usually liked the stillness of the late hour. It was a time to think without interruption. Tonight, however, her thoughts were tangled, weighed down by the frustration of the unsolved encryption problem her top analysts had been working on for months. A code had been discovered in the company's research archives, a code that seemed to hide something critical. But every attempt to unlock it had led nowhere. Millions of dollars and countless hours had been poured into the effort, and yet the puzzle remained. She paused by the glass wall overlooking the city lights, then turned back toward the reception desk, intending to collect a file she had left earlier. That was when she noticed someone sitting cross-legged on the floor, half hidden in the shadows. She frowned, ready to call security, but as she stepped closer, she saw it was only a child, no older than 11 or 12, leaning over a notepad with a pencil in her hand. Her small backpack lay to the side, worn and faded, and a half-empty juice box sat beside it. The CEO blinked, surprised. She recognized her instantly. She had seen her before, waiting patiently in the evenings while her father, one of the janitors, finished his rounds. Usually, the girl sat quietly, reading or doodling, but tonight was different. Tonight, she was furiously sketching strange shapes on her notepad, circles, triangles, intersecting lines. At first, the CEO thought nothing of it. Children drew odd things all the time. But then she stopped dead. The patterns were familiar. Too familiar. Her eyes widened, her pulse quickened. She knew those symbols. They were fragments of the very code her entire security department had been trying, and failing, to crack. The girl tilted her head, erased a crooked line, then redrew it with neat precision. She bit her lip in concentration, her brows furrowed. The CEO moved closer, careful not to make a sound, her heart thudding against her ribs. She crouched slightly, trying to see without startling the child. The notepad was filled with pages of attempts, rows and rows of symbols arranged in different combinations, like trial and error, but carried out with a strange, instinctive logic. The CEO's breath caught when she saw the current page. The girl had arranged the sequence perfectly, exactly the way the analysts had theorized it should look, though they had never managed to complete it. The missing piece, the part that had stumped brilliant adult minds for weeks, was now sitting neatly in pencil on the paper, drawn by a girl no one had considered. The child leaned back a little, tapping the pencil against her chin. She seemed dissatisfied. Then, in one swift motion, she crossed out a line and rewrote a symbol, and the CEO felt her stomach tighten. She was right. The child's correction made the code flow seamlessly, like a lock finally turning with the right key. The CEO pressed a hand against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Could this really be happening? Could the solution her company had poured millions into be sitting in the hands of a janitor's daughter, sketched casually as though it were a simple riddle? The girl seemed utterly unaware of the magnitude of what she was doing. She hummed softly under her breath, her eyes sparkling with amusement as if she were playing a game. To her, these weren't encrypted security codes, these were puzzles, patterns that begged to be solved, like riddles in a magazine or levels in a video game. The CEO's mind raced. She thought of the meetings, the board's impatience, the sleepless nights of her analysts, and the reports stacked high on her desk. And now, here was the answer, sprawled on the lobby floor in childish handwriting. It was unbelievable. It was impossible. Yet she couldn't deny what she saw. A small sound escaped her throat before she could stop it. The girl's head shot up, startled. Their eyes met, the wide, innocent gaze of the child locking with the sharp, calculating stare of the CEO. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with something unspoken. The CEO straightened, suddenly aware of how strange she must look looming over her. She softened her expression, forcing her voice to stay calm. "What are you working on?" she asked, her tone deceptively casual. The girl hesitated, clutching her notepad protectively against her chest. "Just a puzzle," she murmured, as if afraid she had done something wrong. "A puzzle," the CEO repeated quietly. She glanced at the notepad again, at the elegant solution that had eluded her most brilliant employees. Her lips pressed into a thin line. The word didn't even begin to describe it. The girl shifted nervously under her gaze. It's nothing, really, she added quickly. I just like making patterns. It helps me pass the time while I wait. The CEO's throat tightened. The innocence of that statement struck her harder than she expected. To this girl, solving a code that had baffled professionals was nothing more than a way to pass the time. She crouched down slowly, this time with purpose, lowering herself to the child's level. May I see? She asked gently. The girl looked uncertain, then nodded and held out the notepad. Her small fingers trembled slightly as she handed it over. The CEO took it carefully, her eyes scanning the lines, the flawless logic, the clean progression of symbols. Her chest rose and fell unevenly as realization sank deeper and deeper. She looked back at the girl, and for the first time in a long while, the CEO felt something she had nearly forgotten, wonder. The CEO knelt beside the girl, the hem of her tailored suit brushing against the cool marble floor. Her voice came out quieter than she expected, laced with both curiosity and disbelief. Where did you learn this? She asked, her eyes still fixed on the page as though afraid the answers might vanish if she looked away. The girl blinked, shifting a little as though uncertain whether she was allowed to answer. She hugged her knees for a moment before saying softly, I don't know, I just play with shapes. It's like a game. The symbols looked easy. Her tone was matter of fact, completely unaware of the gravity behind what she had just done. The CEO stared at her, the words echoing in her head. Easy. The company's brightest minds, with PhDs and decades of experience, had been circling the problem for months, and to this child, it was nothing more than a puzzle game. She could barely process it. Before she could ask anything else, footsteps echoed down the hallway. The janitor appeared, pushing his cart with a slow, tired rhythm. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, his hands rough with work. When he spotted his daughter sitting on the floor with the CEO beside her, his face drained of color. He froze, eyes wide in alarm, then hurried forward. I'm so sorry, ma'am, he blurted, his voice heavy with panic. She won't be any trouble. I told her to sit quietly while I finish, but he reached for his daughter's shoulder, gently but urgently trying to pull her up. His expression was a mixture of shame and fear, as though he expected to be reprimanded on the spot. The CEO raised a hand, halting him. Her gaze didn't leave the girl. It's all right, she said softly, though her voice carried an intensity that made both father and daughter pause. The janitor stopped mid-motion, his hand hovering protectively near the child. The girl looked between her father and the CEO, uncertain, her notepad still pressed against her chest. The CEO finally tore her eyes away from the paper and focused on the girl's face. There was a spark there, innocence, yes, but also brilliance, the kind of natural instinct that couldn't be taught in classrooms or unlocked by money. It was raw talent, sitting unpolished in the lobby of a skyscraper. You solved something very important, the CEO said carefully, her words deliberate, almost reverent. The girl's brows furrowed. I did, she asked, her tone puzzled, as though she couldn't imagine anything special about what she had just done. The janitor looked even more bewildered. She was just doodling, he said quickly, trying to downplay it. His voice trembled. Please, don't think she was bothering anyone. She doesn't know better. The CEO shook her head. No, she said firmly. She knows more than anyone realizes. Her eyes flicked back to the notepad in the girl's hands. The code was there, complete, shining in its simplicity. A silence settled, heavy but not empty, it was filled with the weight of possibility. The janitor shifted uneasily, his hand resting on his daughter's shoulder as if to shield her from consequences he couldn't yet understand. The CEO leaned forward slightly, her tone softening again. What's your name? The girl hesitated before answering. Lila. Lila, the CEO repeated, tasting the name like it might become significant, like she was memorizing it. She let out a slow breath, trying to steady the thoughts racing through her mind. Her company's future, its secrets, and perhaps even its survival could hinge on what she had just witnessed. And yet, sitting in front of her, the genius behind it all was just a child who drank juice boxes and played with pencils while waiting for her father. The janitor finally found his voice, though it was low and hesitant. Ma'am, she's just a little girl. Don't put too much on her. She didn't mean anything by it. The CEO looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the humility in his stance, the protective grip he had on his daughter's shoulder. He had no idea what his child had just accomplished, or what it meant. He only wanted to keep her safe. But the CEO knew. She understood. Brilliance like this couldn't be ignored. Sometimes, she said slowly, the answers we've been searching for don't come from the places we expect. Lila tilted her head, confused by the weight in the woman's voice. Was it really important? She asked again, still uncertain. The CEO smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. More important than you know. She glanced at the janitor, then back at the girl. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, though it was tangled with something else, fear. Fear of what this revelation meant, fear of what others might do if they discovered who had cracked the code. The janitor shifted uneasily. If she did something wrong, I'll make sure it doesn't happen again, he said, his words rushed, defensive. The CEO shook her head once more. No, she said firmly. Don't ever stop her from doing this. Not ever. Both father and daughter looked at her, stunned into silence. The CEO rose slowly to her feet, her expression composed but her mind racing. She looked down at Lila, her voice soft but steady. You have a gift. One that could change everything. Lila fidgeted with her pencil, her innocence still shielding her from the weight of what she had done. I just like puzzles, she whispered. The CEO's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Sometimes the greatest minds in the world start exactly that way. She turned then, her heels clicking softly against the marble as she walked away, but the image of the girl in her notepad stayed burned in her thoughts. Behind her, the janitor hugged his daughter protectively, still bewildered but sensing something irreversible had just happened. As the CEO moved toward the elevators, one realization pulsed through her. Genius had no title, no status, no polished office. It could come from anywhere, even from the daughter of a janitor sitting on the floor of her building. And if she was right, the future of her company had just shifted in the hands of a child who saw the world as a puzzle waiting to be solved.